In the next, if whatever you have in your mind, which is very interesting for people, if you can brief it, it's much better and it's more interesting for people. But just the idea is great to talk about it. 2,400 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And a politician.
I'm not sure whether there has been progress or something else happening in between these 2004.
Yeah, I think also many times people have probably in the past said that future generations will look up to us like they look up to us now, and they have failed, but they managed to do it, I think, minus the part about women.
Yeah, but
And
I'm
more.
happy that we don't have Nana in here. Nana is a real
Exactly.
feminist.
I was also kind of relieved.
She would just rip that paper.
Yeah, but I think this is also
We are
a
not feminists.
great example of the power of rhetorics. You know? How
Exactly.
over the span of 2,000 years he can still speak to us.
Yeah, it's timeless.
Yeah, it's timeless. And this, of course, makes me wonder about is my interpretation of his speech really
But
what
it's,
he meant it?
but that's a good question.
But
Eero,
that this is not just.
I
It's
think
still an important thing, you know, important speech.
It's very difficult to say that 2,400 years ago he really talked this way, because
Yeah, that's true.
probably
That's
a few
true,
hundred
that's true.
later, a few hundred years later, somebody wrote, like all the Jesus Bible was written 200 years later after Jesus.
This is actually a translation of Thukydides' text,
Yeah,
who
and
was a
he's
contemporary.
the eyewitness or
I think,
contemporary.
I guess he
If
was
he
in
was.
the Peloponnesian. Yes, I think he might have been in the Peloponnesian War.
Well, yeah, that's
It's
what
a
he
little
said.
bit. Always history is a little bit, but still, whoever even few hundred years later, it's great. It's great.
But
Yeah,
there-
and that's, of course, we are still human beings.
Yeah.
Still the same.
Yeah, I think
Essentially.
the major differences is that, for example, as Jonas said before, that you first thought that he is, of course, talking about everybody, and then the last chapters only revealed that he was not actually addressing women at all.
I mean, if you know about the time, then you know that he's not talking about women.
Or slaves, which were not really even mentioned.
Exactly.
But so maybe if we have just rhetorics or the text, then we might miss something between the lines. But then I think interesting question is that which is actually written there, is it meant in the same manner? Like if you mention, like if they talk about beauty or freedom or something, does it mean same thing?
True.
Or
Yeah,
do
the
we
same
interpret-
values. Yeah.
Very
But
true.
If let's say that speech didn't have the part about women, well,
Exactly.
yeah,
I
still-
wouldn't have noticed.
yeah.
So what else is missing there?
Yeah.
What we don't notice.
Yeah.
And talking about actually the who wrote the text actually, so here a point I didn't mention is that this is not written by Pericles himself. He gave the speech.
Yeah.
But this is written by Thukydides based on witnesses, accounts, and he's saying that he has tried to capture the facts, and he has tried to give the themes that he actually talked about, but he then wrote it in the manner he thought that would have been the place at the occasion.
It's like
so it's written by Thukydides.
This is
semi-fantasy.
This is always has happened in history. You know,
yes.
we have an idol like Buddha.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who was really Buddha, but we know the essential idea of what he had. But then through the history, people were adding what they thought is good to Buddha.
Yeah.
And to Muhammad, to Jesus. And nobody knows if there was Moses in history or I don't know. We add the good things that we have to our mind, to this idol that we have.
But I think Thukydides is kind of particular in this respect, because actually, if I remember from the introduction to history course, which I might have taken during my some years in the university, I think they mentioned Thukydides and actually as the originator of the modern historical science, because he tried to go for the facts. And I would like to read a part which he mentioned, just a sentence or two about this. He says this himself.
Okay.
So he tells about his method. However, as he wrote in book 1, now starts what he said in book 1, I have put into the mouth of each speaker the sentiments proper to the occasion, expressed as I thought he would be likely to express them, while at the same time I endeavored, as nearly as I could, to give the general purport of what was actually said. And then the editor or whoever translator also mentioned that he used speeches inserted in his narrative as vehicles for conveying his analysis. And then the editor also mentions that the ideals Pericles points to were clearly those of mid-5th century Athenians.
This is very interesting because
it's very interesting, no?
He is very open about his rhetorics.
Exactly. So it's kind of exactly.
Yeah, he admits I have
yes.
I have my hands here.
And in this sense, he has possibly been the example.
This is like almost
historians.
Yeah, this is.
But then there is something interesting that he's talking about the inheritance and what they have got from the past, from their fathers, and it's like he had access to the history, like books or something, that he knew what has happened and what he really inherited.
Yeah,
from
you
the
mean
past.
Pericles?
Yeah. And 2,400 years ago, he had access to the, some kind of written text from the history, probably. I don't know, but he wasn't just talking like this about 50 years ago or 20 years ago.
I'd guess at that time a lot of stuff was like preserved also just as like a spoken heritage. But also there was I think they had I don't know if they had like this kind of papyrus or this kind of stuff like writing.
Well, I mean, Thukydides at least was writing.
Yeah, of course.
The book.
Yeah, and before him also.
Yeah.
Like there had been already, I think. I don't remember so exactly about the history of writing methods, but I think they already had like libraries and stuff like that.
Perhaps, but as I recall it, the rhetorics, the tradition was more oral. So there were very good speakers at that time, and maybe he was the first who wrote it down, but but it was a common way to give speeches. Yeah.
Well, that was the democracy at the time.
Of course.
That's also Socrates' last speech, though nobody knows if he existed, but it was the same occasion he was being judged by his mischief with the youth.
But there is an interesting...
And he gave a speech to the audience.
But I also liked the point in the speech which had inspired you, the one where they mentioned that we give out of just the act of giving, not to expect something in return, and then they mentioned that we are the exceptional in that sense. At least they thought they were. I don't know how it was in elsewhere. Maybe others thought also that they were exceptional about it, and others were enemies, and we are these good guys. Yeah. So I don't know how exceptional was it.
True, and also kind of not exactly to that point, but the side point. What I also found interesting in that kind of phrases, in those phrases, was that he not only talked about the virtues or the goodness of the kind of way of giving, but he also talked about the goodness of the way of receiving. So he said that not only do we give it without expectation, but also when we get, we will not be thinking that when we pay back, we feel we are paying back, and we don't get any pride for that act we did.
Yeah.
So in a sense that the giver doesn't expect anything back, and the receiver will feel himself indebted, right? So you see this kind of double-sided there.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting, because this would make it so that somehow the giver does not need to kind of, force the other to pay back either.
Yeah.
But instead the person will himself, because of these norms, will kind of feel that, oh, I owe this person now.
Yeah, and at the same time they were saying that nobody should sort of like feel that they are in debt, but then again it was assumed that the receiver somehow...
No, actually he did say that, yes,
yeah,
they feel indebted.
Yeah. So it's kind of like not fully to my. If it was like that, I think that's kind of like half finished idea about altruism, like giving without.
Yeah.
You wanted to say something?
But I think it's a virtuous from the point of view of both of them.
No, what was it?
I just find this virtues interesting.
Yeah.
She had something.
I was just wondering about like how democracy has actually changed, like how it was in Greece, because he says that it means that the power is in the hands of the people, but it's not really the case anymore. So I think it's funny that we have this system that is ancient, but it's not actually that same system. We're just kind of like riding on that wave of like, okay, it's the people's choice, but
we don't have slavery here.
Or what do you mean?
No, I think she means that nowadays we have the representative democracy, and so kind of we probably and there's a feeling that we don't actually have the power over the state so much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like we were talking about the Dynamo thing.
Yeah.
For example, last
that's
time.
True. That's true.
Like I don't know who's making that decision, but it's not me at least.
Yeah.
Or any of us, but I mean, we can try to.
Point.
We can try
Good
to
point.
do it, but still.
But then we didn't have this power of the money. Now we have the power of the money. Money decides.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Then it was military and the power of politician, but today it's the money.
Yeah.
And here he's actually pointing on that. In one part he said that something like the thing that here we regard wealth as something to be properly used rather than as something to boast about.
And that has changed.
Properly used.
Yes. So in the sense that it's only an instrument for something good. Not good in itself.
Yeah. That's good.
That's great. I noticed then you should just put a line under that. This very great sentence.
And now it came to my mind that perhaps we could change the democratic system of Finland into partially towards Athens, because now we have the problem that we are a big nation. We have like 5 million people in Athens. I don't know how many thousands or 100,000 of people you had, but perhaps we could have, similarly as there, a direct democracy in the cities and in the villages.
Yes.
Because that's its proper scale of size as well.
Yeah, and I think, as we mentioned earlier, that
we should work on it. We should not just talking about it. Not talking about it. We should really work on these things. Because people talk and then it's forgotten. Let's go for money.
Shall we go for a team?
And also I think this is a good thought. We could think about it, how this was like 2,400 years old speech, and we first thought that it's almost similar to nowadays, except that they are seeing enemies and they don't have rights for women. But also it's not so that with forwards to the future that we would just get better. But instead we have also lost some values. For example, the money thing. So basically it's a timeless thing. It's about values which are changing constantly, and some values are changing maybe for the better for society, and some are changing for the better of power for just few people. Like now we have power of the money, where 1% owns the world, and back then it was before democracy. Back then it was more like aristocrats, or the power of the few, like those were like high in the society.
We shouldn't forget that if we were living there like that, and we should just keep those values, we couldn't survive. In evolution, human pick the things to help human to survive. So property and money was made in a sense, even religion was in a sense to help us to evolve to a next level always, and to create more cultural tools and also technology and science to help us to survive and get us probably out from the earth and to the space. And whatever we have, we cannot just condemn that as to say that okay, no, this we shouldn't have.
I consider it more to be like a tool. Like, for example, people invented fire, which is a nice tool, but if you lose control of it, everything will burn. Same thing with money. It's a nice instrument, but if you use it wrongly, then it might just be destructive for the society. So basically, you shouldn't sort of like have you shouldn't judge the instrument, but how it's used, in a sense.
When there is millions of zeros in the internet, it's not useful anymore. If it's just 40, you have a usage for that. But if it's like 110000000, but people have this money in the internet, but they don't have a usage for it. They cannot use them.
It doesn't circulate anymore.
That was actually a point I was thinking. Like the interesting point that could have been discussed, but maybe it can be another time. But I can just mention it briefly. Is today many people are calling for a discussion of the values. We need that so that we know where to use our money for. That's the whole idea of it. But then people are like, they are just calling for this, but nobody knows what is actually a value discussion.
And we're also talking about, often you hear in politics like this demand calls for a value leadership, or like leadership in values, and somehow that's separated from leadership actually, like something else, even if that is actually.
So to this, I would like to point out that one thing that is missing today is the talk of virtues. And virtues have been forgotten from the Western discussions and ethics after the 18th century, more or less. So I think that might be the fruitful place where actually these value discussions can be held at. And there has been recent positive psychology, as it is called, research on this, and they actually found universal virtue groups, that in all cultures you have certain virtues which all agree upon, more or less, which is also actually against the relativistic cultural notion, or the relativistic notion of man. So I think these are all super interesting, but I think now is not the time, but perhaps another time.
Can we talk about it next time?
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, I mean, we can carry on discussion. I just pointed out that maybe I won't go further into this now.
Eero, you can tell us.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to emphasize the difference between contemporary Finland and Athens. If I remember correctly, there were 1 or 2,000, 20 or 10,000 Athens citizens and 5 million slaves, or the rations were,
How to say again?
5 million or 500,000, maybe 10,000, 20,000, something like that. I think the slavery was like not 5 million, but 500,000, something like that. Anyway, the portion is, it's
But
please,
can I add?
Yeah, sure, quickly.
This sounds to me a lot like the income distribution today in the world.
Yeah.
It's like we are that 10,000. I mean, amongst that 10,000 Athenians.
Very.
And the poor of the world are working for us amongst the cheap oil.
This is called modern slavery.
It is. The slavery of the capital. A very good point. However, I think because we found the similarity, you said about the giving and receiving, how Finnish we haven't got this obligation to respond to a kind gesture or generous gesture. We don't have that, so that's something we should be very proud of. We don't have 10,000 Finnish people and 500 or 5 million slaves here. We have.
It's better to say that we should be aware of, not proud of, because to be proud of is like, I believe that I am better, or I have something better, or these are just
be aware of
arguable that people
be content.
But that is very often something that people miss when they talk about.
True.
Like it, I think the typical young, aware Finnish person is very shy to give value to his own culture.
Exactly.
We don't need to be.
We don't have pride in that way.
Yeah. We don't have to be proud, but we should recognize the value of the things we have received.
Appreciation.
Appreciation,
for one's own culture. And I think that's the very interesting part here, because this was such an inspiring speech. And so many of the things were similar to
And
Finland.
you're such an inspiring friend.
Beautifully spoken.
So it's actually about Finland as well. So should we not appreciate
It's universal.
You could have the same speech and just remove the fact that it's to first just keep the speech and then in the end tell that actually the speech was from
and
the
we can have that before we announce the establishment of direct democracy in Turku.
Yes.
Sorry,
But
what were you
please
saying?
send a copy to Trump. Believe me, it's gonna
But
happen.
will this direct democracy
You can send it.
thing, how, will we first like clean the city room from the current officials? I mean,
Say again. Sorry.
I mean, when we declare it, will it be done in collaboration with the current chosen representatives, or will we just take it over as a revolutionary
It
act?
will be done.
It will be done. That's a nice way of putting
So
it.
we were thinking we would give this speech, but remove all the parts that don't go along with the Finnish culture, and give it at the perhaps on the city hall before we establish the direct democracy of Turku.
Yeah, and actually we can just start it. We don't have to.
That's very true.
We don't have to start it. We can just have our own currency and just start it.
That's democracy there.
Yeah, and then the legislators are like, hey, we're keeping these meetings. And it's for you. Like you have like, I don't know, 50 people. We have the rest of the city, so you can have your meetings.
Yeah.
But we are building actually a cultural
You can
center.
give your money
here.
also, because we have had to.
Yeah.
But and we can say that they are welcome as all the other citizens of Turku to actually come to the meetings.
It's a bit fun, you know.
And then they might have a problem in I can already see the international news that we have here like Finland lacks any prison space for all the citizens of Turku because they are now rebelling. In a sense, they are not violent, but they're just having their own meetings and not respecting our meetings.
So this is actually the problem I see here, is that the central government might not fancy the idea, because it might be a bit too out of their
They don't fancy many ideas, but if
We can demand an autonomy for Turku.
exactly.
This you talk like this is fancy, but no. If really we have a good core, we have a good active people to work on these things, we can make change. Because we got here by people who were devoting their life to make changes. So why not us? Why not here? Why there is all the possibility?
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is it.
No, if you see that we discuss about the name of the cultural center, we can discuss how we can be effective on these changes in our own local city. You know?
Yeah. Changing the
not by going to the city council or city hall, but
council.
by making a bigger voice. Let everybody hear us. Probably it's not good or it's not right idea, but let them to hear us.
And we don't even need to make a voice. We can just start making decisions.
You already made a decision by being here. You were not coming. Do you remember? Today you came. That was making decision.
Yes. This is the first step. Starting from Pericles'
It's a
speech.
smaller step, but that's true.
It's a big step. It's a step. It's a 2,400 years step.
Wow.
If that guy,
it's a big step.
if that guy was sitting before the speech and thinking about now this is laughable, I cannot do that. None of them could be here in your hand today.
I'm not saying it's laughable.
That guy was serious on what he was thinking.
Definitely.
And
no, I mean, this reminds me of the, now we think we are like civilianship very active, but when we look back to the, say, at least in Life of Brian, when you look at the streets, you had all these prophets, they wouldn't ask a permission, at least I assume so, because they came to give the message. So I mean, where are those people in Turku? Where are the people who have a message?
That's true. Brian was running away and he didn't want to give the message.
So we just go to the street and we give the speech.
You don't need the street nowadays. It's online. You can go to the
the street is digital, like around the world.
Street
is for stabbing of
people.
Nobody's on the street anymore.
Alone as your own
I'll be giving the speech and they will be just looking at their iPhone.
You have to give the speech in Snapchat.
True.
Maybe in bit smaller bits.
When he made his speech today, we make a podcast of this one.
Or viral exemplaries. Just forget it.
All right, I think.
Okay, it's there.
That's another.
I think we have still 3 minutes left of our first conversation. Oasis after talk podcast.
Can you
This is
repeat
not
the
recording
editor's
anymore.
sentence? Who are
It is recording.
It's not recording.
It is recording.
It is?
recording.
Yeah, we've been recording.
So I'm just telling that I'm Ville and I have with me Eero, Ronja, Jalal and Jonas, and this is the first Conversation Oasis after talk, like flaming talk. Flaming type.
Eero, what you wanted to say? Just a moment.
Theory.
I really like when I mentioned about the ratios of slavery and free citizens, and someone said, is it comparable with the citizens of welfare states and the rest? So any contributions to that? I think that was a very
on point.
On point. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I think that thought needs a lot of. We could look more into that.
True.
I think
we could actually research this topic further and actually see what are the actual similarities and what are the non-similarities.
Yeah.
Because this claim has been made. And then people say, oh yes, it is, it's just modern slavery. But is it actually so?
Ronja, you've been very quiet this time. Next time you should be more active.
Sorry, it was
we
such
don't
a
want to accept
mansplaining time.
It's Pericles' planning. Pericles' planning time.
Yeah.
mansplaining from 2012. Ancient mansplaining.
Yeah, he mansplained before he even knew what that was.
And he's our forefather.
Beyond
today,
the grave.
by the way. He's our forefather.
Mansplaining beyond the grave.
Now we have 1 second.
The mansplaining.
1 second. Thank you. Bye bye.